unknown. Mysteries and mayhem. Five lesser-known serial killers that may have never been caught. The thought of a Dexter next door is thrilling and taboo. In reality, though, we like our safe little worlds behind our locked doors and our screens. This episode will feature 5 lesser-known serial killers that have never been caught. The monster is in our midst. The Atlanta Ripper, 1911. The Atlanta Ripper was responsible for 15 to 20 victims. In the year 1911, the city of Atlanta was to be gripped by a brief reign of terror. In early 20th century, the Ripper brutally murdered 15 known African American women. Deep-seated racism was rampant at this time in Atlanta. These murders were not the main focus of the police or media. It was not until the Ripper's 5th victim that he became front-page news. The police believe the Ripper was responsible for at least 21 murders. The Ripper killed in quick succession, and only on Saturdays. This fact was odd, to say the least. The 8th victim of the Ripper was very lucky, as someone passed by and heard the screams to come help. The witness was one to give an account of the Ripper. He said he was tall, black, and built. The Ripper managed to evade capture that night. The Ripper's spree continued. Very little police power was focused on the Ripper case due to the racism in the state. A few men were wrongfully arrested, and the murders went on. Henry Huff was one of these men. In a strange turn of events, a grand jury claimed the Ripper was a myth. There was no explanation given for them to have this conclusion. The Atlanta Ripper slowly faded back into the shadows and back into our nightmares. The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, the Cleveland Torso Murders. None other than the serial killer that took down the career of the infamous Elliot Ness. The Butcher murdered at least 12 people in the most disturbing and depraved ways imaginable. He was a real-life Leatherface. His M.O. was decapitation and castration of corpses. The bodies had no blood and had been cleaned. Some victims were preserved well. He killed at random, men, women, it did not matter. Elliot Ness was none other than the man who took down Al Capone. The Butcher became Elliot's #1 target. At the time, Elliot Ness was director for public safety in Cleveland. Even the great Ness could not catch the Butcher, identified as the most depraved serial killer of all time. As time passed, the Butcher became more sadistic and bold. In 1936, a basket containing the body parts of Florence Polio was discovered. More decapitated bodies were discovered over the years in the area. In 1938, 8 years after his mayhem, the Butcher dumped the torso of a woman in a location where she could be seen from Elliot Ness's office. Ness was irate. On August 18, 1938, he led a team to the Butcher's hunting grounds, Kingsbury Run, for a detailed search. Finding nothing, he then burned the shantytown to the ground. The Butcher did not stop his killing. The Butcher allured Ness. Frank Dozel was arrested in 1939 for 2 of the murders, but he died before his trial. Ness believed the Butcher was Francis Sweeney, a deranged doctor who committed himself to a mental institution in 1938. Ness believed that he was the Butcher, as he would send taunting letters about not getting caught. Sweeney was a madman, but was he the Butcher? Ness's failure on this case tarnished his reputation. It never recovered, and the Butcher remained a mystery. The Doodler. This serial killer was overshadowed by the Zodiac as they were both active in California at the same time. The Doodler claimed more victims than the Zodiac. The Doodler operated out of a San Francisco gay community. He earned the name because he would draw sketches of his victims before attacking and killing him. He earned that name because he would draw sketches of his victims before attacking and killing them. He has 14 known victims, from January 1974 to September 1975. The Doodler killing was sexually motivated. He would gain his victims' trust by drawing their pictures. He would take them to secluded areas to kill them. At least 3 men survived the Doodler attacks but would not come forward due to the fear of being outed as gay. Police believed there was 3 different killers at the time. They had several suspects. This included at least one prime suspect who was identified by a victim. The victim would not come forward, and that left the Doodler free to kill again. He was never caught. The Axeman of New Orleans. The Axeman of New Orleans was able to terrorize New Orleans from October 1919. He is believed to have killed 6 to 7 people and injured another 6 or 7. His target was Italian Americans. He killed men, women, children, it did not matter. He only killed the men if they tried to intervene when his target was more aimed at the women. Maggio and his wife were brutalized with an axe. The police found out this was not the first murder for the Axed Man, as in 1911, a murder with the same MO had occurred. Some survived the Axeman's attacks, like Harriet Rowe and Louis Susumer. He killed without mercy. Panic ensued. A letter was sent to the local newspaper from the Axeman. The letter began with, "Hell, March 13th, 1919. Band esteemed mortals. I'm fond of jazz music and was planning on passing over New Orleans on March 19th. He announced that he would stay away from the house playing jazz. If not jazz was heard, he would get the axe." No attack happened that night. The streets of New Orleans filled with the sound of jazz. The Axeman did strike again, several more times. Mike Pepitone was the last known victim of the Axeman. No one knows why the attacks had stopped, but some believe Joseph Momfrey was the Axeman and that Pepitone, widow, had shot him to death in 1920. There's no records to back up this story. Or did the monster of New Orleans just dance off into the dark pages of history? Jack the Stripper. The Hammersmith nude murders. As with most short spree serial killers, the true body count is unknown, but he was believed to have at least 6 to 8 victims. The stripper was active in London in 1964 to 1965. Just like his 19th century namesake, he preyed on prostitutes. His victims were found naked and had underwear placed in their mouths. His crimes were sexually motivated. All victims were missing teeth and stripped of clothing. During the investigation, 2 more likely victims were added to his body count. These murders occurred in 1958. Many suspects had been on the police's radar, but none were ever charged. One man, named Mugo Ireland, was thought to be the killer. He committed suicide before he could be captured. No one ever knew Jack the Stripper's true identity. So there we are, 5 lesser-known serial killers never to be caught. Who said monsters are not real? They could live right next door. See you next time for more mysteries and mayhem.